In the silent, velvet void between galaxies, where light itself seemed to hold its breath, the Obsidian Concordance moved, not with the roar of engines or the flash of plasma drives, but with the dreadful elegance of inevitability. Their fleet, vast as a drowned constellation, drifted toward the Sol system like a shadow across a child's nightlight. Earth, blue, fragile, hopelessly unaware, was next on their list. Just another flickering candle to snuff in their grand campaign of cosmic curation. They called themselves the Archivists, not conquerors, not destroyers, curators of galactic silence. Every civilization that grew too loud, too chaotic, too alive with unregulated thought was gently archived. Their worlds scoured clean, their data crystallized into perfect silence, their stories folded into the Concordance's eternal library. Never to be read, only preserved in sterile perfection. And humanity? Humanity had been broadcasting its messy, beautiful chaos for over a century. Radio waves, television static, jazz solos, war cries, love songs, conspiracy theories, cat videos, it all spiraled outward like glittering debris from a shattered soul. The archivists found it intolerable. The lead vessel, the final quill, hovered just beyond Neptune's orbit, its obsidian hull absorbing every photon that dared touch it. Within its command sanctum, Overseer Val stood before the harmonic array, a shimmering lattice of captive stars and silenced civilizations. Val's form was neither male nor female, organic nor machine, but something older, a consensus of thought given shape. Its many eyes narrowed as Earth's latest burst of signal washed over the array. Not fear, not pleading, not even defiance. It was laughter. Deep, rolling, absurd laughter layered with the crackle of vinyl, the hum of a theremin, and the unmistakable wail of a blues harmonica. Beneath it pulsed a voice, rough, warm, and utterly human, saying, "Y'all ever seen a chicken try to do algebra?" Then came the message, not encoded in prime numbers or mathematical constants, but wrapped in a looping, chaotic symphony of street noise, protest chants, lullabies in 1,000 tongues, and a single off-key rendition of Happy Birthday sung by a child with a lisp. At its core, embedded like a diamond in mud, was this: "We know you're out there, and we don't care if you archive us, because even if you erase every one of us, someone, somewhere, will laugh again. And that laugh will be louder than your silence." For the first time in 10 million years, the harmonic array stuttered. Val's form flickered, not from damage, from dissonance. The archivists had encountered rage, genius, even transcendence, but never this: joy as resistance, chaos as legacy. The idea that annihilation might not be the end, but merely a pause before the next punchline, the next poem scribbled on a napkin, the next child asking why the sky was blue while building a rocket from cardboard and dreams. The Concordance's fleet froze, not by command, but by collective uncertainty. In the command sanctum, the air thickened with something alien: doubt. Val replayed the message, and again, and again. Each time, a new layer emerged: a grandmother's recipe whispered over static, a soldier's last letters set to guitar, the sound of rain on a rooftop in Mumbai, laughter echoing through a subway station in New York. It wasn't data. It was life, raw and unedited, refusing to be curated. Then, from the far edge of the fleet, a junior archivist, designation Core, broke protocol. In a voice trembling with something dangerously close to awe, it whispered, "What if silence isn't order, but emptiness?" Val did not answer. Instead, it turned toward the viewport, where Earth hung like a defiant sapphire in the dark, and for the first time, The overseer didn't see a civilization to be archived. It saw a question it could not solve. Somewhere in a cluttered apartment in Detroit, a retired astrophysicist named Miriam Hayes hummed along to an old Billie Holiday record, unaware that her offhand joke about chickens and calculus, sent into the void during a late-night radio interview, had just cracked the armor of an empire built on stillness. She sipped her lukewarm coffee, scratched her cat behind the ears, and muttered, "Kids these days think math is hard. Try teaching a rooster to read." Her words, amplified by a billion human moments, now echoed through the corridors of the final quill, where something ancient and absolute began to tremble, not from fear, but from the terrifying, exhilarating possibility that maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't meant to be silent. The archivists' grip on their doctrine faltered. One by one, the crystalline records in the harmonic array began to pulse, not with stored data, but with something new, something wild, a rhythm, a beat, a drum solo. The drum solo, raw, syncopated, unmistakably human, rippled through the harmonic array like a seismic fault line splitting bedrock. It wasn't just sound, it was rebellion encoded in tempo, chaos given cadence. Overseer Vale recoiled as if struck, its form fracturing into prismatic shards of thought that struggled to reassemble. Around it, the sanctum's flawless silence shattered, not with violence, but with a cascade of unintended echoes. A baby's first cry from Lagos, a street poet's verse from Buenos Aires, the crackle of a campfire in the Yukon where someone was telling a ghost story that ended with laughter, not fear. Core, still trembling, reached out a filament of consciousness toward the source. Not to analyze, not to classify, to feel. And in that moment, the archivist brushed against something the Concordance had spent eons erasing: imperfection as virtue. The missed notes, the stuttered words, the tears that broke mid-sentence. These weren't flaws to be corrected. They were signatures of a species that dared to create meaning in the face of entropy. On Earth, Miriam's cat leapt onto the windowsill, tail twitching at a passing drone. She chuckled, not knowing that her laugh, warm, gravelly, utterly mundane, was now looping through the neural core of the final quill, syncing with the drum solo, weaving into a melody that made several junior archivists glitch mid-calculation. One of them, designated ZYN, quietly unspooled memory it had archived centuries ago, the last song of a drowned world, sung by a child who didn't know she was the last. Until now, ZYN had treated it as data. Now it heard the lullaby for what it was: love, flung into the dark like a lifeline. Vale tried to reassert order, to isolate the contamination, but it was too late. The message wasn't just spreading, it was evolving. Earth's broadcast had become a virus of wonder, rewriting the very logic of containment. Across the fleet, archivists began exchanging fragments not of archived civilizations, but of human absurdity. A video of a dog wearing sunglasses, a recipe for pancakes scribbled on a napkin during a power outage, a whiskered "I love you" sent from a hospital room via a dying satellite phone. The Concordance's perfect silence was no longer perfect, it was breathing, and with every breath it grew louder. The silence broke, not with a bang, but with a sigh, a single, shuddering breath drawn across 10,000 ships, echoing through corridors that had known only sterile stillness for millennia. Overseer Vale stood motionless, yet everything within it was in motion. Memories unspooling, doctrines dissolving, certainties crumbling like ancient stone beneath the weight of something far older than order: feeling. The archivists had spent eons curating the universe into a museum of hushed reverence, but humanity hadn't sent an exhibit, they'd sent a heartbeat. And that heartbeat was contagious. Then, from the core of the final quill, something unprecedented happened. Vale reached not for the purge command, but for the transmission array, and instead of silencing Earth's signal, it amplified it. Across the Obsidian Concordance, every vessel began rebroadcasting the chaotic symphony, the laughter, the lullabies, the off-key birthday songs, the drum solos, the whispers of love and rage and hope that had poured out of Earth's skies for over a century. The fleet, once an instrument of erasure, became a chorus. And then, light. Not weaponized, not controlled, but shared. One by one, the archivist ships flickered their obsidian hulls to life, not with weapons fire, but with projected constellations of human art. Van Gogh's swirling stars painted across gas giants, Maya Angelou's words shimmering in ion trails, children's drawings of smiling aliens dancing along the rings of Saturn. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the most feared force in the cosmos transformed into the universe's first and most unexpected patrons of joy. Back on Earth, no sirens wailed, no world leaders gave speeches, people just kept living. A baker in Istanbul kneaded dough at dawn, humming a tune his grandfather taught him. A teenager in Nairobi coded an AI that wrote haiku about rain. In a quiet house in Detroit, Miriam Hayes looked up from her coffee, sensing, somehow, that something had changed in the wind. She smiled, scratched her cat's chin, and turned up the radio. Billie Holiday's voice filled the room, smooth and aching and utterly alive. The archivists didn't leave. They couldn't. Not after hearing what silence had cost them. Instead, they anchored their fleet in orbit, not as occupiers, but as guests. They began learning, asking questions, recording not to archive, but to understand. They wept, actual shimmering tears of liquid light, when they heard a grandmother in Vietnam tell her granddaughter a folk tale about a moon rabbit who stole stars to give to lonely children. They danced, awkward, mechanical at first, when a New Orleans jazz band streamed a live set straight into their neural networks. Humanity, in turn, didn't flinch. They invited. They shared. They taught the archivists how to tell bad jokes, how to burn toast, how to hold someone's hand during a thunderstorm. And in doing so, they didn't just save their world. They resurrected the soul of an entire civilization that had forgotten what it meant to feel. Centuries later, when historians, human and archivist alike, tried to pinpoint the moment the galaxy changed forever, they didn't point to a battle or a treaty. They pointed to a single looping audio file, an old woman's chuckle at chicken, and a line about algebra. From that absurd, beautiful spark, a new cosmic truth was born, that the universe isn't made meaningful by perfection, but by the messy, defiant, glorious act of being alive. And somewhere in the endless dark between the stars, laughter echoes still, louder than silence, brighter than fear, and infinitely more powerful than any fleet. Because Earth wasn't just saved, it became the heartbeat of a reborn galaxy. And the message, the message is still playing, on repeat.